So you can see this is typical police state. You would allow people to demonstrate, but their voice can never be really covered. Or even those act up, those gay parade demonstration can never be heard. They have to find a strategy to running on highway, to stop the highway. Then journalists would report the incident. So this is very established capitalism, society, media, and the education. The West have no moral position even to pose fingers to China, because just look at the mirror what you did in past years, in relate to all the international.
大家好，今天这期视频带大家走进艾未未的一场西方媒体访谈。作为中国著名诗人艾青之子，艾未未因长期批评中国社会而受到全球关注。在这场对话中，艾未未谈到了中国、西方民主、言论自由以及国际政治等多个敏感话题。而最引发争议的是，曾经对中国社会持批判态度的他，在经历多年海外生活、接触不同社会之后，却开始重新审视自己过去的判断。在访谈中，艾未未提出了一个颇具争议的问题：西方真的比中国更加自由和开放吗？他认为，所谓西方言论自由并非绝对存在，很多时候只是停留在表面。而在一些问题上，西方社会同样存在限制和双重标准。除此之外，他还谈到了新疆与加沙问题，并将两者进行对比，引发了巨大争议。为什么一个曾经被西方支持的中国批评者，如今却开始质疑西方价值体系？他的观点究竟是对西方的反思，还是对中国的重新认识？接下来，我们一起走进这场充满争议的访谈。
I get the sense that you think we in the West sit here and we look at China and we think this is a repressive country, they have no free speech, they don't believe in human rights. But your experience of the West seems to have led you to conclude that actually there's not that much difference. I'm really interested in how you make that argument.
Well, it started early when U.S. invaded Iraq. That time I was in New York. I was in part of this anti-war coverage. I take my photos and, the demonstration. I realized the one demonstrate have less people than the police. Police on the two sides of the street. For the bypasser, you cannot even see demonstrators. You only see police there. So you can see this is typical police state. You would allow people to demonstrate, but their voice can never be really covered. Or even those act up, those gay parade demonstration can never be heard. They have to find a strategy to running on highway, to stop the highway. Then journalists would report the incident. So this is very established capitalism, society, media, and the education, and it's all being controlled so well, and to tell you what is wrong, what is right, and which is not so different from the Chinese society, except it seems, yes, you can have some voice, but your voice can never really be heard.
There's a very interesting moment with Alexander Solzhenitsyn when he moves from Russia to America. He criticized America. He had been a dissident criticizing the Soviet Union, and then in a favorite speech, he criticized America. But it's very difficult to hear because we want to say, come on, these two things are not the same. Nobody detained you for 81 days. In America, nobody put your father in exile. No.
You know how long Julian Assange has been in British jail? I visited the jail, I visited court, I visited the embassy when he was hiding. I know exactly the whole case. He was pulled out by British agent from the embassy. That is already pretty strange image. Everybody will remember he was carried out. Then he was being put in there without those highway public pressure. He can end up his life in there. So then now you ask what kind of crime he really made. So-called this WikiLeaks platform today, everybody has a, it's not that he just a little bit early trying to expose. But without that, even the file relate to this island.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. You know, come on, we all know what's going on, but the file is still not open. You know, the only possibility like WikiLeaks can open it. That guy even can commit suicide in jail, can believe it. And they said the camera is not working. Come on, we have 6-8 cameras here.
It must be strange for you because the West saw you as a Chinese dissident. They liked you criticizing China.
Yeah.
Now you criticize the West, so they must get surprised or uncomfortable.
Confused.
True. It's so uncomfortable. After even yesterday, I criticized I said something, the West have no moral position even to pose fingers to China because just look at the mirror, what you did in past years, in relate to all the international events, in relate to Israel-Gaza event, in relate to in almost every respect. What is really being openly discussed and, so.
But if somebody like Julian Assange had done the equivalent in China, there is a fair chance he would be dead by now. And where are Uyghurs? What would you say was the West's Uyghurs? Would you say that's the Palestinians?
Well, in Xinjiang, the Uyghur.
Uyghur situation.
Yeah.
I think the West about Uyghurs also is a problem.
Because?
Because you clearly put the concentration camps, to use that name, we know conceptually use certain names, which has to clearly talk about something else. And then the Uyghur has been re-educated in some areas, but not that Uyghurs, that for me, my father, as a Han dynasty, not Han, Han race people, we come much earlier than Uyghurs being re-educated in 1957. So the West's concept about that is really not respectful because you're choosing topics rather than giving even hands about the situation. That means you don't have integrity in what you're talking about. That's why I keep criticize the West.
But the Uyghurs themselves, we've talked to the Uyghurs who are based in London, they talk about concentration camps. They say that's the reality of the life of the people that they've left behind. And likewise,
could be true, but you cannot talk about Uyghurs, not talk about Gaza. Gaza has been longest prison for decades.
Mm-hmm. But
you know that.
You would say would you say that's an equivalent?
It's more than equivalent. It's much harsh situation in Gaza. You know what happens, all the women and children being killed. Uyghurs are not being killed in this kind of education. They, in Chinese words, they are being trained with some skills, with some propaganda education. For them, it's what they did to me.
Where do you think Chinese culture is going in the next 10, 20 years? Do you think people will begin to rediscover the past? They will show more respect for traditional classical culture? Or is that fading? What's happening with this?
China has a lot of things to do to fill up the gap between 1900 to this 120 years. And they have been in such up and down, tremendous, unthinkable ideology switch from feudalism or communist, then it become a post-state. You cannot call it communist, but you cannot call it capitalism. So it's really a new society. So they have a lot to learn and they have a lot to catch up.
Can I just go back to the parallels between West and East on freedom of speech? As you said, Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister in China, and anybody in Britain can go out and can protest against him visiting. They can say that it's the wrong thing to do. Indeed, many politicians have said that it's the wrong thing to do. And he can defend himself against that criticism. Whereas you couldn't make the same case against, let's say that Xi Jinping came here, the Chinese state would make sure that there was very little public opposition to that of any kind. So
no, when Jiabao visits the Cambridge, gave a talk, there's one Western boy threw a shoe to him, if you still remember that incident. Of course, that is quite shocking for Chinese. You insult a public official, but through a shoes to a state leader, it's not started from that boy, but a journalist threw the shoes to Bush when he gave a talk.
Yeah.
And that journalist was being put in jail for years. You know that. So let's check on the facts. So I'm a good journalist. I try to make myself balanced view. And, if you check on the British record, there's over 1,200 people being put in jail over so-called hate speech in just recent study.
You're sounding like Elon Musk now.
Elon Musk?
He always complains about hate speech.
Well, I don't sound like anybody. I just, based on facts, it is 1,200 people in jail because based on the so-called hate speech.
But do you think there is such a thing as hate speech?
Well, that's a very vague words. I think hate speech should be same crime as love speech, philosophically.
What do you make of Donald Trump, historically, culturally? What do you think of Donald Trump? What does he represent?
I think he's truly a phenomenon. Someone being elected, then someone being dumped, and somebody being elected again. That we call it a democratic practice, right? So,
and what does he tell us about American culture or world culture?
I think it's the best product of American culture. Capitalism come to a clear, nude ideology of make a deal, art of a deal. So all he concentrated is about deal. It's not no ideology, no philosophy, but let's see what kind of deal comes out.
And the corruption and the lies? And the
corruption? I'm not entitled to tell about corruption because I know very little about corruption, but I would say certainly it will be huge corruption because you heard his personal gaining of profit could be, I don't know, there's a number, it's hard to remember, 3 billion or something. But I don't know, you can call it corruption or it's just a political gaining.
Of all the countries you've lived in, you said earlier you had a lot of respect for Mao, or there was a lot of respect for Mao. You clearly had respect for Deng Xiaoping. What's your assessment of President Xi?
We are about same generation. He's 3 years older than me. I don't even know him. His father and my father are close friend.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we are
both punished.
Huh?
They're both punished.
Yes, his father also punished for a while. But that's in revolution, being polished. How to say, being purged, or it's not exactly a bad thing, because it's too many struggles in different moment. I cannot give personal adjustment about him. Assessment, only because I'm not in the same position. I'm as an individual artist. He is taking care of this big state. But from foreign policy, I would agree with him. Not him, but China's national policy in relate to Middle East, in relate to world peace, in relate to nobody should or interfere other nations' business, not like U.S., not like Britain.
But Russia and Ukraine? Russia, Ukraine?
Russia and Ukraine, they also kept themselves as a neutral position. They are not really support Russian. They are associated with Russian because geopolitics is if they don't, because U.S., also because West, without NATO, without U.S., there's no such a war. So this is clear.
Can I, we're moving back and forth, but I think my final question, I want to bring you back to the idea of the scholar and the gentleman. So,
thank you.
So, for example, in the Tang dynasty, often the officials would leave the imperial court and then they would return back to the countryside. Tell me a little bit about what this means in terms of people's lives, the meaning of their life, their spirituality.
I thank you for mentioning those details because it seems you are a profound scholar in terms of history. I only can, from my experience, during Cultural Revolution, after that, all the very end, Chairman Mao had the idea all the educated university students should go back to factory and farming. They said that this is a much bigger world, and you can do so many things when you are there. At the beginning, people do not really understand, but I do understand. President Xi has been working in the very bottom. I grew up in the very bottom. So I think what teaches the most is not school, but really about society, about the people, about struggle from the bottom.
My final question. I mentioned in the introduction that you've focused a lot in your work now on the theme of refugees. And as we said, you lived in Germany, and there was a point where Germany took in an awful lot of Syrian refugees. And you said this: Europeans should not have the privilege to feel any moral superiority. Asking for gratitude from those who are struggling makes me sick. And I just wondered what you think governments should be doing about the extraordinary refugee flows.
Yeah,
that are
this is a question with such a complex level. Now we are dealing something like let's say it's a cancer. Then in the West, we always think that cancer, we have to cut it off. We have to use all kind of treatment. But with Chinese medicine, we think we have to provide that become a cancer. That's a living style. That's some kind of philosophy. And what you eat, what you're behaving. So prevent that is much more important than to just treat it. That's the Chinese medicine's philosophy. I totally agree. With refugee situation, we have to look at the history of why so many people have to pull out themselves with their family, their language, their tradition, their religion, come to some place like Germany or Switzerland, which completely very hard to settle. Even for me, not as that kind of refugee, still very hard for me to settle. Mm. So we have to have a compassion and to understand they are escaped the war and the famine, and who caused those war and famine. We have to really question ourselves why we don't help them to stay at their home.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Yitan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
回看这场访谈，真正值得讨论的，或许并不是艾未未到底支持哪一方，而是一个更深层的问题：我们究竟应该如何理解自由、民主以及一个国家的发展道路？长期以来，西方世界习惯用自身的价值标准评价其他国家，认为选举制度、多党竞争以及个人权利保障就是衡量一个社会是否进步的核心标准，而中国的发展道路则经常被放在另一套评价体系中审视。但正如艾未未在访谈中提出的那样，一个国家的现实情况往往比简单的制度标签更加复杂。一个社会是否真正自由，除了看人们能否表达观点，也要看普通人的生活是否得到改善。一个国家是否真正民主，也不仅取决于政治形势，更取决于政府是否回应民众需求，是否能够解决社会面临的问题。当然，不同社会对于自由、秩序、公平以及发展的理解本身就存在巨大差异。艾未未的观点之所以引发争议，正是因为他打破了一种固有印象。过去，他常常被西方媒体视为批评中国的代表人物，而如今，他却开始公开反思西方社会的问题。这种变化提醒我们，任何社会都不应该认为自己拥有绝对正确的答案，也不应该简单地把世界划分为先进和落后。与此同时，对于中国自身而言，外界的批评和质疑同样具有价值。一个国家的发展不仅需要经济增长和社会稳定，也需要不断面对自身存在的问题，在变化中寻找更好的方向。真正有意义的讨论，并不是证明某一种制度一定完美，而是在不同经验和现实之间寻找值得借鉴的地方。从中国的发展到西方社会面临的挑战，再到全球秩序的变化，今天的世界正在经历一场深刻转型。过去几十年形成的很多观点，也正在被新的现实不断挑战。越来越多的人开始意识到，评价一个国家不能只依靠单一标准，也不能只看政治制度的表面形式，而需要结合历史背景、文化传统、社会环境以 以及普通人的真实生活。当然，艾未未的观点并不意味着所有问题都已经有了答案，他对于中国历史、政治以及社会问题的批评依然存在，而他对西方制度的反思也同样引发不同声音。正因为存在分歧，这场讨论才更有意义。一个成熟的社会或许并不是没有争议，而是能够允许不同观点碰撞，并在碰撞中不断寻找进步的方向。那么，你认为衡量一个国家成功的标准到底应该是什么？是选票、制度，还是普通人的生活变化？西方自由民主模式是否真的代表唯一答案？而中国的发展道路又是否正在改变世界对现代化的理解？欢迎在评论区留下你的看法，我们下期再见。